The faint smell of antiseptic hung in the air, sharp enough to sting the back of my throat. The hospital lights buzzed above me, that sterile white glow making everything feel too bright and too quiet. I'd been there for 3 nights already, recovering from what my doctor called a minor car accident. But there was nothing minor about waking up in a ditch with no memory of how I got there. Every time I tried to piece it together, the crash, the headlights, the sound of metal twisting, my head throbbed. The nurses said I should rest. The doctors said I was lucky. But deep down, something didn't feel right. That morning, around 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of soft footsteps. A nurse was standing at the end of my bed, not my regular one, not the woman with the curly blonde hair who usually checked my vitals. This one was new. Her eyes darted around the room like she was afraid of being seen. She leaned close to my bed, her perfume faint but distinct, lavender and alcohol wipes. Then, without a word, she slipped a folded piece of paper into my hand. Her fingers trembled. I whispered, "What's this?" She didn't answer. Just pressed a finger to her lips, eyes wide with something I can only describe as terror. Then she turned and walked out as quietly as she came. I sat up, the heart monitor beeping faster. My fingers fumbled to open the note. The handwriting was hurried, uneven, almost shaky. It read, "Leave now if you value your life." For a long moment, I just stared at it. My first thought was that it had to be some kind of sick joke. But something in the way she looked at me, the fear in her eyes, told me it wasn't. I swung my legs over the bed, wincing from the pain in my ribs. The floor was cold under my feet. My clothes were gone, all I had was the hospital gown. I reached for the call button but froze. What if they heard it? That's when I noticed something else. The hallway outside my door was pitch black. Not dim. Black. The usual hum of machines, the chatter of nurses, the soft wheels of carts, all gone. The silence was heavy. Wrong. I glanced at the note again, the words burning in my mind. "Leave now." I didn't know who wrote it, or why, but every instinct in my body screamed that I should listen. I unplugged the heart monitor, and the machine flatlined with a long beep. Panic flared. If anyone heard that, they'd come running. I limped toward the door, clutching my side. When I peeked into the hall, a flicker of movement caught my eye. A shadow at the far end, near the nurse's station. I couldn't see who it was, but they were standing too still. Watching. I stepped back into my room and waited, holding my breath. The shadow didn't move. Then, slowly, the lights began flickering back on, one by one, down the hallway. That's when I saw him. A man in scrubs, tall and broad, walking toward me. He wasn't carrying a chart, and there was no name tag on his uniform. He had something else in his hand, not a clipboard, not medical equipment, a syringe. I froze. My pulse raced. He looked up, saw me, and smiled. Not a friendly smile. The kind of smile that made your skin crawl. I stumbled back, hitting the bed. My first thought was to run, but my legs were weak. I whispered, "Who are you?" but my voice cracked. He didn't answer. Just kept walking closer, slow, steady, like a predator approaching its prey. And then a voice came from behind him. "Dr. Collins, stop." It was her. The same nurse who gave me the note. She grabbed his arm, pulling him back, and hissed something I couldn't hear. He shot her a glare so cold I thought he'd hit her. Then he turned and walked away without a word. The nurse hurried into my room, closing the door behind her. Her hands were shaking. "You need to go," she whispered. "Now." "Who was that?" I asked, my voice trembling. She didn't answer. She just reached for the 4 in my arm and ripped it out. I gasped in pain as blood trickled down my hand. "Listen to me," she said. "They think you saw something in that crash. You weren't supposed to survive." My stomach turned. "What do you mean?" But before I could finish, she pressed something into my hand, a set of car keys, and whispered, "Basement. Blue sedan. Go. Don't look back." Then she opened the door, peeked into the hall, and motioned for me to move. I stumbled into the corridor, my bare feet slapping against the cold floor. The lights flickered again, and alarms began to sound somewhere in the distance. She pushed me toward the elevator. Take it down. Don't stop until you're outside. What about you? I asked. She gave me a sad smile. I'll buy you time. Before I could say another word, the elevator doors closed and I was alone, descending into darkness. The lights inside the elevator flickered. I stared at my reflection in the mirror-like door. My face was pale, bruised, eyes sunken from lack of sleep. The beeping alarms grew faint as the elevator descended, and then the power went out. Darkness swallowed everything. I could hear the faint hum of emergency power kicking in. A red light glowed above the door, dim and eerie. My hands shook. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Then, from somewhere above the elevator, a metallic clang. Someone was on top of the elevator, moving. I held my breath, staring at the ceiling vent. A shadow moved across it, blocking the light for just a second, and then a faint voice echoed through the vent, "You shouldn't have stayed." The elevator jerked to a stop halfway between floors, the emergency light casting everything in a blood-red hue. My breathing grew shallow. The metallic clang from above echoed again, closer this time. I pressed myself into the corner, staring up at the vent. Something was moving up there, slow, deliberate, metallic scraping against metal. Then, silence. The only sound was my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I whispered to myself, "Please, please keep moving," and jabbed the emergency button, but nothing happened. The system was dead. I clenched the note in my hand, the same one that started all this, and prayed it wouldn't end here. I wasn't ready to die in a dark elevator. Not like this. Then I heard a faint click, and the top panel of the elevator shifted. Someone was prying it open. The panel lifted, and a pair of gloved hands appeared, reaching in. A flashlight beam cut through the red light, blinding me for a moment. My body froze in terror. "Please, don't be scared," a voice hissed. "It's me." It was the nurse. Relief washed through me so fast I almost collapsed. She climbed down through the hatch, breathing hard, her face streaked with sweat and panic. "What are you doing here?" I whispered, voice trembling. She didn't answer at first. She just pulled a small crowbar from her belt, yes, a crowbar, and jammed it between the elevator doors. Metal groaned as she forced them open just enough for us to slip through into a narrow maintenance shaft. "Come on," she said. "We don't have much time." The shaft smelled of oil and dust. Pipes ran along the walls, and the air was stifling. We climbed down a narrow ladder, the nurse leading the way with her flashlight. My body screamed with every movement, pain radiating from my ribs. "Where are we going?" I asked, barely above a whisper. "Basement," she said. "If we can reach the garage, you might have a chance." "Might." She didn't respond. Just kept climbing. When we reached the bottom, she pushed open a metal door that led into a dim corridor lined with flickering lights. It looked nothing like the clean, sterile hospital upstairs. The walls were cracked, the floor damp, wires dangling from the ceiling. "What is this place?" I asked. "The old wing," she said. "They shut it down years ago. No cameras, no staff, no one comes here anymore." The way she said it made my stomach twist. We weren't supposed to be there. We moved fast, the sound of our footsteps echoing down the corridor. My heart raced with every shadow we passed. I could feel eyes on us even though I knew no one was there. "Who are they?" I finally asked. "You said they think I saw something. Who's after me?" She stopped, her flashlight beam trembling slightly. "You were in that car accident with Dr. Leonard, right?" I nodded. "Yeah. He was my company's CFO. We were driving back from a meeting." She cut me off. "The crash wasn't an accident." Her words hit like ice water. "What do you mean?" She looked around, lowered her voice. "Dr. Leonard was investigating something at this hospital. A drug trial that went wrong. People were dying, patients, volunteers, all buried in paperwork and fake reports. He found proof, and they tried to silence him." My blood ran cold. "So when your car went off the road," she continued, "they thought they'd killed both of you. But you survived. And now, you're a loose end." I felt sick. My legs nearly gave out. "You're saying the hospital?" "Yes," she said. The same people who patched you up are the ones trying to finish what they started. Before I could respond, a loud bang echoed down the hall, the sound of a door slamming somewhere behind us. We froze. Then came the faint squeak of rubber soles on tile. Footsteps. The nurse grabbed my wrist. Run. We sprinted down the corridor, past broken equipment and abandoned gurneys. My vision blurred, pain burning in my chest, but adrenaline kept me moving. We turned a corner and stopped dead. At the far end of the hall stood a man in a lab coat. His face was pale, calm, too calm. He raised a hand and spoke in a tone that was almost gentle. "Stop. You don't know what you're doing." The nurse stepped in front of me. "Stay back, Dr. Collins." It was him. The same man with the syringe. He sighed, shaking his head. "You're making a mistake, Laura." She tightened her grip on my hand. "He's innocent. You know that." Collins took a slow step forward. "No one's innocent, Laura. You think you're helping him? You're just signing your own death certificate." I glanced at her. "Let's go." But Collins moved faster than I expected. He pulled something from his pocket, a vial, and threw it against the wall. It shattered, releasing a thick white vapor that filled the corridor instantly. "Gas," she shouted. "Run." We bolted toward a side door, coughing, eyes burning. My lungs screamed as the air turned heavy and chemical. She shoved the door open, and we stumbled into another passageway, darker, narrower, lined with pipes. Behind us, Collins's voice echoed faintly through the gas. "You can't run forever." We kept moving until we burst through a final door and found ourselves in the underground parking garage. The nurse fumbled the keys in her pocket, her hands shaking. "Blue sedan," she gasped. "Row C." The garage was mostly dark, only a few lights flickering overhead. Rows of empty cars stood in eerie silence. Somewhere in the distance, a door slammed again. "Come on," she said, pulling me along. We reached the blue sedan, an older model, dusty but functional. She threw open the driver's door and pushed me inside. "Go," she said. "Don't wait for me." I grabbed her arm. "I'm not leaving you." She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Please. If I come, they'll track us both. You still have a chance." Before I could protest, she shoved the keys into my hand and slammed the door. I watched through the window as she ran back into the shadows. I started the engine, it roared to life. And then I saw movement behind me. In the rearview mirror, a dark figure stepping out from behind a concrete pillar. Dr. Collins. He was holding something, a gun. He raised it slowly, and my body froze. I slammed the accelerator. The car lurched forward, tires screeching against the concrete. The gunshot rang out, deafening, sharp, and the rear window shattered. Glass sprayed across my shoulders. I screamed, ducking as the car fishtailed toward the exit ramp. Another shot. Metal sparked off the hood. I didn't look back. I just kept driving, heart hammering, until I hit the ramp and saw the faint glow of the night sky above. Freedom. Or so I thought. As I sped out of the underground tunnel, something caught my eye, flashing lights ahead. Police cars. Dozens of them, blocking the exit. And then the truth hit me like a second crash, they weren't there to save me. Their lights weren't blue and red. They were white. Unmarked vehicles. Private security. The same people who ran the hospital. And I had just driven right into their trap. I slammed on the brakes, tires screeching against the wet pavement as the car skidded sideways. The flashing white lights blinded me, bouncing off the cracked windshield. My pulse thundered in my ears, my breath ragged and uneven. The sedan came to a stop just a few feet from the blockade, 3 black SUVs, engines still running, their headlights trained on me like spotlights. I could make out silhouettes behind the glare, men in suits, standing still, hands at their sides. Too calm. Too professional. Not police. Not rescuers. They were waiting for me. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of their engines and my own heartbeat pounding in my chest. Then, a voice. Cold. Male. Amplified through a speaker. "Step out of the vehicle, please." I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my hands slick with sweat. My instinct screamed, "Don't move." But another voice, my own conscience, whispered, "You can't run forever." Still, I didn't move. The voice repeated, firmer this time, "Step out of the vehicle. Now." A figure stepped forward through the glare, tall, wearing a long black coat that flapped slightly in the wind. He wasn't holding a weapon, at least not one I could see. But his posture radiated authority. I squinted through the cracked glass. His face came into focus, sharp features, slicked back hair, eyes that looked almost too calm. He smiled faintly, like this was all routine. "Mr. Hayes," he called out. "You've been through quite a lot tonight. Let's make this easy, shall we?" Hearing my name made my blood run cold. "How do you know who I am?" I shouted through the window. He tilted his head. "We know everything about you. You've been under our care for 3 days. We saved your life. Now we just need you to come with us." "Who are you?" He smiled again, and that smile told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't here to help. He was here to finish what they started. I shifted the car into reverse, slammed the gas, and the tires squealed as the sedan shot backward. One of the SUVs moved instantly, cutting me off. Another turned sideways, blocking the only exit route. Trapped. The man in the coat started walking toward me. Each step was slow, deliberate. I could see his reflection in the shattered glass, calm, confident, patient. "Mr. Hayes," he said again, his voice steady. "You're hurt. You're scared. I get it. But if you keep running, you'll only make this worse." I looked down. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. On the seat beside me, the note, the one the nurse gave me, was still there, crumpled but clear. "Leave now if you value your life." I thought of her, the nurse, and how she'd risked everything to help me escape. She said they were hiding something. And the man in front of me, he was the face of it. "I'm not going anywhere with you," I said. His smile vanished. "That's unfortunate." He raised his hand, a small signal, and suddenly 2 of the suited men started walking toward the car, guns drawn. Panic surged through me. I slammed the accelerator again, this time veering toward the side wall. The sedan hit the concrete barrier hard, scraping along it with a deafening shriek. Sparks flew. My shoulder slammed into the door, but I didn't stop. I turned sharply and rammed into one of the SUVs. The airbag exploded in my face with a sharp pop, blinding me momentarily. My ears rang. I tasted blood. When the smoke cleared, I saw one of the men sprawled on the ground, his gun sliding away. The others shouted orders, muffled through the ringing in my ears. I kicked open the door, stumbling out into the night. My legs barely held me up, but adrenaline pushed me forward. "Stop him," someone shouted. I ran. The cold air hit me like knives. I darted between 2 cars, ducking low, the gravel biting into my bare feet. My hospital gown flapped in the wind. I looked like a ghost running through a nightmare. Bullets cracked behind me, sharp, echoing. One hit the ground just inches from my foot. Another pinged off a nearby car. I spotted a chain-link fence at the far end of the lot, half collapsed. I sprinted toward it, lungs burning, ribs screaming. My vision blurred from the pain, but I didn't stop. When I reached the fence, I climbed, or tried to. My arms trembled. My feet slipped on the metal. Another shot tore through the air, grazing my leg. I screamed but kept climbing. By the time I dropped to the other side, my hands were bleeding, and my head spun. I ran into the trees beyond the fence, darkness swallowing me whole. The forest behind the hospital was dense, thick with fog and silence. My breaths came in sharp gasps, every step crunching leaves and twigs. Somewhere behind me, I could still hear them, the men shouting, the dogs barking. They were coming. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stop. The nurse's voice echoed in my mind, "They think you saw something you shouldn't have." What did I see? I couldn't remember the crash. My mind was a blur of metal and light. But the more I ran, the more fragments returned to the car, Leonard yelling, something in the glove box, a flash drive. That was it. He'd told me to keep it safe. I stopped suddenly, leaning against a tree, gasping for breath. My hospital gown had a small pocket stitched near the side. I reached in, and my fingers touched cold metal. A flash drive. My heart dropped. He must have slipped it into my pocket before the crash. That's what they were after. Headlights cut through the trees behind me. They were close. Too close. I started running again, clutching the flash drive in my fist like a lifeline. Then I saw it, a faint glow ahead, beyond the trees. A road. Civilization. I burst through the last row of trees, stumbling onto asphalt. A truck was coming, its headlights blinding. I waved frantically, screaming for help. The driver slammed the brakes, tires screeching. He jumped out, a middle-aged man with a baseball cap, confusion and concern on his face. Jesus, kid. You okay? What the hell happened to you? I could barely speak. Please, help me. They're coming. Before I could finish, the sound of engines roared behind me. SUV headlights burst from the tree line. The trucker's eyes went wide. Get in. We both dove into the cab as the SUVs hit the road. He floored it, and the truck lurched forward, gears grinding. Who the hell are those guys? He shouted. I clutched the flash drive, trembling. I don't know, but if we stop, we're dead. The truck barreled down the road, headlights flashing past trees and darkness. The SUVs followed close behind. One pulled up beside us, trying to ram the truck. The driver cursed and swerved, the whole cab shaking. Hang on, he yelled. He turned hard, sending the back of the truck swinging wide. The SUV clipped a guardrail, flipped once, and disappeared into the ditch. The others slowed down just enough for us to get a lead. We sped down the empty road for miles until the lights behind us finally vanished. The driver glanced at me, breathing hard. You're gonna tell me what's going on, right? I looked down at the blood on my hands, the flash drive in my grip, and the hospital fading behind us in the distance. I wish I knew, I said quietly. But I think whatever's on this drive, people have died for it. He glanced at me again. You wanna tell the cops? I looked out the window at the dark horizon. No. I can't trust anyone right now. Silence filled the cab as the truck rumbled down the empty road. The night stretched on, heavy and endless. I didn't know where we were headed. I just knew one thing, the nurse was right. I should have left the first night. Because whatever I'd stumbled into, it was much bigger than I could ever imagine. The truck roared through the darkness for what felt like hours. The hum of the engine and the rhythmic clatter of wheels against the road became the only sounds in the world. I sat slumped against the door, trying to steady my breathing, staring down at the small metal flash drive in my shaking hand. It was the size of my thumb. Ordinary. Harmless. But I knew deep down that people had killed for it. The driver, whose name was Mark, finally broke the silence. You gonna tell me what's on that thing? He asked, his voice low, cautious. I shook my head slowly. I don't know yet. But whatever it is, it's the reason I'm still alive. He frowned. You mean it's the reason they want you dead? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Mark sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. We're about 40 minutes from the next town. There's an old diner by the highway. You can rest there, maybe figure out what's on that stick. After that, he glanced at me, eyes narrowing. You're on your own, kid. I don't do government-level trouble. I understand, I said quietly. We drove the rest of the way in silence. Every now and then, I looked back, expecting to see headlights, but there was nothing. Just endless blackness and the occasional flash of moonlight through the trees. When we finally pulled into the diner's gravel lot, the clock on the dashboard read 3:47 a.m. The neon sign above the entrance flickered weakly, Maggie's Place open 24 hours. The place looked almost deserted, except for a lone car parked near the back. The kind of quiet that felt too quiet. Go inside, Mark said, putting the truck in park. I'll fuel up and grab coffee. You eat something. You look like hell. I nodded, gripping the flash drive tightly, and stepped out into the cold. The air smelled faintly of rain and gasoline. I pulled the diner door open, the bell above it jingling softly. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A waitress stood behind the counter, wiping a coffee pot with a rag. She gave me a polite smile. Sit anywhere you like, hun, I nodded, sliding into a booth in the corner where I could see the door. My reflection stared back at me in the window, pale, exhausted, haunted. My mind kept replaying the night, the nurse's trembling hands, Dr. Collins's cold stare, the crash, Leonard's voice shouting something before everything went black. And that flash drive. I pulled it out, turning it over in my hand. No label. No markings. Just a small red lead at the base. The waitress set a mug of coffee in front of me. "Rough night?" she asked. "You have no idea," I muttered. She gave a sympathetic smile. "Well, coffee helps most things." When she walked away, I took a deep breath and pulled out the nurse's note again. The edges were soft now, worn from being clenched in my palm. "Leave now if you value your life." Whoever she was, Laura, she'd risked everything for me. And I wasn't going to let it be for nothing. I spotted a small employees-only door near the back, probably leading to an office. I needed a computer. If there was something on that flash drive, I had to see it. When the waitress turned away, I slipped from my seat and moved toward the door. The office was small and cluttered, old papers, invoices, a dusty computer on a wooden desk. The monitor flickered to life when I pressed the power button. It took forever to boot. My hands were shaking as I inserted the drive. The red LED blinked once, then twice, then steady. A folder appeared on the screen. Trial documents, Project Hephaestus. I frowned. Hephaestus. The name sounded familiar. Mythology, maybe. The god who forged weapons for the gods. I clicked the folder. A list of files appeared, all encrypted, except one. Patient footage 14b.mp4. I double-clicked it. The video opened in a small window, grainy, black and white hospital footage. I saw a patient strapped to a table, surrounded by doctors. Their faces were blurred. The patient was thrashing, screaming, a sound I'll never forget. A voice off camera said, "Increase the dose." The patient convulsed violently, monitors blaring. Then, silence. The body stopped moving. A few seconds later, one of the doctors leaned over the patient's face. I couldn't hear the words clearly, but I caught fragments. Heart failure, wait, his stabilizing. Then the patient's eyes opened. Not like a normal human's eyes. They glowed faintly, pale, almost silver. The voice said, "Trembling now, it works." Oh my God, it works. I stared at the screen, horror flooding through me. They weren't healing people. They were experimenting on them. I opened another document, a report partially unencrypted. The words hit like a hammer. Subject regeneration successful. Neural override protocol pending. Further. Trials scheduled for 10/17. Unregistered casualties, 6, unregistered. Casualties. My stomach turned. That's what Leonard had discovered. That's what got him killed. They weren't testing medicine, they were testing control. Using patients as lab rats for something beyond comprehension. I pulled out the flash drive, heart racing. I needed to get this to someone, the press, the FBI, someone, but before I could move, I heard the faint chime of the diner door opening. Footsteps. Voices. I froze. Yeah, that's the guy. Booth by the window. The truckers outside fueling. My blood ran cold. They'd found me. I quickly slipped the flash drive into my sock and grabbed the note. When I turned toward the back exit, I caught a glimpse through the office window, 2 men in suits walking inside, scanning the diner. I pushed through the door quietly and slipped into the alley behind the building. Rain had started falling, cold, relentless. The sound of my own breathing drowned out everything else. I ran, barefoot, through puddles and mud, the neon diner sign fading behind me. The alley opened into the main road. I turned the corner and froze. Mark's truck was still at the pump. The engine was running, but the driver's door was open. "Mark!" I whispered. No answer. I crept closer, my heart hammering. The gas nozzle was still in the tank, the pump handle swaying in the wind. And then I saw it, on the ground beside the truck. A trail of blood. It led around the back of the vehicle. I followed it, every nerve screaming, don't look, but I had to. When I rounded the corner, I saw him. Mark was lying on the asphalt, motionless, eyes staring blankly at the sky. A single bullet wound in his chest. I dropped to my knees, hands shaking. No, 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 no. Before I could even breathe, a voice came from behind me. Calm. Smooth. Familiar. You're making this very difficult, Mr. Hayes. I turned slowly. Dr. Collins stood there in the rain, holding a silenced pistol. His lab coat was gone, replaced by a dark jacket. He looked almost serene. How did you find me? I stammered. He smiled faintly. You didn't think we'd lose you, did you? You should have stayed at the hospital. We could have made this painless. You killed him, I whispered, voice shaking. He tilted his head slightly. Collateral damage. He made a poor choice. I felt rage burn through my fear. You're monsters. He chuckled softly. No. We're pioneers. And then he raised the gun. I didn't think. I just ran. The shot cracked through the rain. I dove behind a dumpster as the bullet whizzed past my ear. My hands fumbled against wet metal until I found something heavy, a broken crowbar, half-rusted. When I peeked around the corner, Collins was walking toward me, slow and steady, just like before. Give me the drive, he said, voice echoing. And maybe I'll let you walk away. I tightened my grip on the crowbar. My ribs ached, my leg burned, but adrenaline drowned the pain. Come get it, I spat. His smile vanished. He fired again, missed. I swung out from behind the dumpster and threw the crowbar as hard as I could. It hit his hand, knocking the gun away. He cursed and lunged forward, tackling me to the ground. We rolled in the mud, struggling for the weapon. His hand clamped around my throat, squeezing tight. You have no idea what you're playing with, he snarled. I clawed at his wrist, gasping for air. My vision darkened at the edges. Then I felt something hard under my palm. The gun. I grabbed it. And pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the rain. Collins went still. His grip loosened, eyes wide in shock. He fell backward, blood mixing with the water pooling around us. I lay there for a moment, trembling, the gun slipping from my hand. The rain fell harder, washing the blood away. Then, faintly, I heard the sound of sirens in the distance. Finally, someone had heard. But I didn't move. I just sat there in the rain, clutching the flash drive, staring at the lifeless body of the man who'd tried to kill me and realizing the nightmare wasn't over. Because he wasn't the only one involved. And the real danger hadn't even begun. The sun had begun to rise when the truck finally rolled to a stop outside a small diner in the middle of nowhere. My whole body ached from the night, the crash, the running, the fear that hadn't left me since I woke up in that hospital bed. The truck driver, Carl, he'd said his name was, looked at me cautiously. You sure about this, kid? You look like hell. Maybe I should call the cops. I shook my head instantly. No cops. Please. He sighed, rubbing his temple. You're starting to sound like one of those conspiracy nuts. But fine. I'll grab us some food. You stay low. He climbed out, muttering something about crazy nights and government chases, and headed inside. I sat there in the cab, the flash drive still tight in my fist. The morning light made it look ordinary, just a small piece of plastic and metal. But I knew better now. People had died for this. I pulled out Carl's old laptop from the back seat. He'd said it was mostly for invoices and movies. I powered it on, my hands trembling slightly as I plugged in the drive. The screen flickered, then loaded a single folder, Project Seraphim. My stomach tightened. Inside the folder were files labeled by dates, hospital records, surgical reports, patient IDs. One file caught my eye, Hayes 0237. I clicked it. My own medical chart opened, the same date I was admitted. The diagnosis field was blank. The treatment section, though, wasn't. It listed something I didn't understand, Phase 2, neural reconfiguration test subject. And under that, a name. Director, Dr. Leonard Graves. My best friend. I froze. My vision blurred. For a second, I thought I'd misread it, maybe another Leonard. But no. The same man I'd trusted for 10 years, who'd sat in my living room, laughed with me, called me brother. I scrolled further. There were attached images, CT scans, brainwave patterns, and video files. I clicked one. The footage showed a hospital room. Me unconscious on a table, wires attached to my head. Leonard stood beside the bed, speaking into a recorder. Subject Hayes shows stable response to phase 2 stimuli. Neural imprint transfer appears successful. Proceeding with memory suppression and behavioral rewrite protocol. His voice was calm, cold, detached, like a scientist describing a lab rat. Then the camera turned, briefly revealing someone else in the room, a woman. The nurse. "He's not stable, doctor," she said, her voice trembling. "You said this was about rehabilitation." "It is," Leonard interrupted sharply. "But for the greater purpose. If this works, we can rewrite trauma, rewrite people." He turned off the recorder. The footage ended there. I sat frozen, my heart pounding in disbelief. My best friend had used me as a test subject. The accident, the hospital, everything. It wasn't coincidence. It was all part of their experiment. I felt sick. My head spun, and for a moment, the world blurred. Then I heard footsteps outside the truck. Carl climbed back in, holding 2 coffees. "Here," he said, handing me one. "You look like you could use this more than me." I nodded faintly. "Thanks." He took a sip and stared out at the horizon. "So, you gonna tell me what's really going on?" I hesitated. "If I tell you, you won't believe me. Try me." So I did. Everything. The crash, the hospital, the nurse, the chase, and now the files. He listened silently, his face tightening with each word. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. "Jesus Christ, son. You're saying they messed with your head?" "I don't know," I said. "But this drive proves something big. I need to find someone who can expose it." Carl nodded. "All right. I might know a guy, journalist up north, used to dig into government stuff. He owes me a favor." For the first time all night, I felt a flicker of hope. "Really?" He smiled faintly. "Yeah. I'll take you to him." We started driving again. The roads stretched endlessly through the pale morning light. I sat quietly, my mind replaying that video of Leonard over and over. His calm voice. The way he said my name like I was an object. The betrayal cut deeper than the wounds on my body. About an hour later, Carl's phone rang. He picked it up, eyes on the road. "Yeah. Yeah, I got him. We're heading north." I frowned. "Who's that?" He didn't answer. Just nodded to the voice on the line. "Yeah, he's alive. Don't worry. I'll deliver him." My stomach turned cold. "Carl," I said quietly. "Who was that?" He didn't look at me. Just kept driving. "Carl. Who was on the phone?" Silence. Then finally, in a low voice, "I'm sorry, kid. They offered money. Said you were dangerous. I got a family." My blood ran cold. Before I could react, there was a sudden click. Carl had pulled a small handgun from the glove box, resting it on his lap. "Don't do anything stupid," he said softly. "We'll just drive, all right? They said they don't want to hurt you, they just want their property back." "Property?" I hissed. "I'm not their property, Carl." He shook his head, eyes full of guilt. I wish I believed that. I scanned the truck interior, looking for anything I could use. My right hand slowly inched toward the coffee cup in the holder. "Carl," I said, my voice trembling, "you don't have to do this." "Please," he muttered. "Don't make me." But I already had. I grabbed the coffee and threw it straight into his face. He screamed, the truck swerving violently as the hot liquid splashed across his eyes. I lunged for the wheel, trying to steady it, but the truck veered off the road, hitting a guardrail. Metal screeched. We spun out, tumbling into a ditch. The world went white, then black. When I came to, my head was pounding. The windshield was shattered, the air thick with smoke. Carl lay slumped over the wheel, groaning. The gun was on the floor between us. I reached for it. "Don't," Carl wheezed. "They'll kill you." I picked it up anyway. My hands were shaking, but I didn't point it at him. I just looked at him, this man who'd saved me, then sold me. "I'm sorry," I whispered, and stepped out into the cold morning. The road was empty except for the faint echo of engines far away, getting closer. I took one last look at Carl, then ran into the forest again. Branches tore at my skin, my breath burning my lungs. The flash drive was still in my pocket, heavy with truth. Somewhere out there, Leonard was waiting. And I was done running. This time, I was going to him. The forest was silent except for my breath and the crunch of frost beneath my feet. The rising sun painted the horizon gold, but the light felt foreign, too pure for the darkness that clung to me. My body screamed in pain. My ribs ached, my leg throbbed, and the taste of blood still lingered in my mouth. But none of it mattered. Not anymore. All I could think of was one thing. Leonard. My best friend. My betrayer. The man who turned me into a test subject in his experiment to rewrite trauma. The hospital was behind me now, miles away. But I knew he wasn't done. He wanted that flash drive back. And I wanted the truth. I followed a dirt trail down toward the valley until I spotted a cluster of old buildings, an abandoned psychiatric facility, half buried under vines and fog. The sign out front was faded, but I could still make out the words, St. Miriam's Research Center. That name, I remembered it from one of the files on the drive. Project Seraphim, Site Alpha. I tightened my grip on the gun I'd taken from Carl. It felt heavy in my hand, a last resort, not a weapon. As I approached, I noticed the doors were already open. Someone had been here recently. My heart kicked hard against my chest. Inside, the air smelled of chemicals and dust. The walls were lined with old medical charts and half-broken computers. I moved quietly down the hall, my steps echoing softly. Then I heard it, faint, but unmistakable. A voice. His coming. I froze behind a corner. The voice was female. Familiar. I peeked out, and my breath caught. It was her. The nurse. She was standing in a dimly lit room, speaking to someone I couldn't yet see. Her hair was tied back, her scrub stained and torn. She looked exhausted, but alive. "I told you he'd find this place," she said. "He deserves the truth." A second voice answered, smooth, calm, deliberate. "Leonard. You've done enough, Claire," he said. "This isn't about truth. It's about control. And if he finds out everything, he'll destroy everything we built." "We built," she snapped. "You turned him into a lab rat, Leonard. You called it therapy, but you were trying to rewrite his mind." My blood boiled. My finger twitched against the gun. Leonard stepped into view. He looked older than I remembered, more worn, more haunted. His once kind eyes were hollow now, like he'd stared too long into the abyss and started to enjoy it. "Claire," he said quietly, he was dying. His brain was beyond saving. I rebuilt him. "You should be thanking me." I stepped out of the shadows. "Then thank you, Leonard," I said coldly, "for turning me into your Frankenstein." They both froze. Leonard's gaze met mine. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "Ethan," he finally said, voice steady. "You shouldn't be here." "Yeah, you've made that pretty clear," I replied. "Why, Leonard? Why me?" He sighed, taking a slow step forward. "Because you were perfect. You'd lost everything, your wife, your home, your purpose. You were a man begging for a second chance. And I gave you one." "No," I said. "You took my will. You played God." He shook his head. "You don't understand. Project Seraphim wasn't just about memory. It was about evolution. About erasing pain, creating a better version of the human mind." "By erasing people?" I snapped. "By rewriting who they are." His expression softened, almost pitying. "Pain breaks people, Ethan. It broke you. I tried to fix that. But now," he glanced at the flash drive in my hand. "Now you're going to undo everything." The nurse, Claire, stepped between us. "Don't listen to him," she said. "That drive holds every detail of the experiments. If you release it, they'll shut him down. All of it." Leonard's eyes darkened. "Claire, step aside." She shook her head. "Not this time." He moved quickly, too quickly. He pulled a small syringe from his pocket, lunging toward her. Instinct took over. The gun went off. The sound shattered the silence. Leonard staggered back, eyes wide, blood spreading across his coat. Claire gasped, staring at me, then at him. He fell to his knees, his voice trembling. You think you've won? The files, the backups, you can't stop it. I crouched beside him, rage and sorrow swirling inside me. You were my friend, I said quietly. He smiled faintly, even as his life slipped away. And I gave you purpose. Then his body went still. The room fell silent. Only our breathing filled the air. Claire knelt beside him, tears glistening in her eyes. He was a monster, she whispered, but once, he really believed he was helping people. I looked down at the flash drive in my hand. The weight of it felt heavier now, not just data, but lives. Memories. Souls. What do I do with this? I asked softly. She met my eyes. You already know. I nodded. Then I walked to the nearby terminal, the same one Leonard had been using, and plugged in the drive. The files opened automatically. Thousands of patient logs filled the screen. With one deep breath, I selected them all, and hit upload. The system whirred to life, connecting to the outside network. Within minutes, the data was being transmitted to multiple press outlets, whistleblower platforms, and independent archives. There was no stopping it now. Claire placed a hand on my shoulder. You just exposed the truth to the world. Maybe, I said, staring at the screen. Or maybe I just started another war. We stood there for a moment, two broken people in a room full of ghosts, as the dawn light streamed through the shattered windows. Finally, Claire turned to me. You need to disappear now. They'll come for you. And next time, they won't send Leonard. I looked out at the sunlight spilling through the trees beyond the glass. Let them come, I said quietly. I'm not running anymore. She smiled faintly. Then I guess this is goodbye. Before I could answer, she slipped out through the back door, fading into the morning mist. I stood alone for a long time, the hum of the terminal filling the silence. The files finished uploading. A small message appeared on the screen, transmission complete. I exhaled, not in relief, but in release. For the first time in years, I felt real. Not an experiment. Not a subject. Not a victim. Just a man haunted, scarred, but free. I stepped out into the dawn, leaving the building behind. The wind carried the faintest sound of sirens in the distance, but I didn't look back. Somewhere, the world was about to learn the truth about Project Seraphim. And somewhere out there, maybe others like me were waking up. I walked down the empty road, the light growing brighter with every step. Maybe this wasn't an ending. Maybe it was the beginning of something far bigger.